Hello vinyl community, how's everyone doing? Well, I hope. I've been buying a ton of stuff recently and I have such a backlog of stuff to show you. I'm not going to get through all of it. Definitely not today, probably not ever. But I've been selling a lot of stuff as well, so I'm kind of, in my own mind, justifying it. But I've picked up some great stuff and I've got a real mixed bag of stuff to show you today. So stick around, it might be something that you like the look of. But we'll start off with one that I picked up from my local record fair. And I couldn't believe it was there because it's something that just never crops up in this country. And I couldn't believe the price either. The guy was asking 30 quid for it. And I figured it was worth more than that. I didn't know off the top of my head. But I knocked him down to 25 anyway. And it's Bittersweet and Hypnotic 1, which is a great bit of Psych pop. Now the median price for this on Discogs, the average price is £101.25, and I got it for 25 quid. And this is a really nice copy. And you can see the sleeve is in good shape. No problems there at all. The disc is really quite tasty. It's even got the original in the sleeve. There you go, on the ABC Records label. And yeah, really nice copy of this album. So like I say, it's Psych pop. Starts really well with a track called Speak Softly, which has sitar and strings and a slightly loungy lead vocal on that one. Like I say, a really strong opener. I could imagine it as quite a sizable hit when it came out in '68. It's got that kind of Kites by Simon Dupree kind of a sound to it. If that was a hit, I can't see why that wouldn't have been if it had been released. So yeah, starts out well. Elsewhere, it's a strong album altogether, but the highlights for me, second track, 2086, which has lots of spacey theremin sounds and a kind of a UK Toy Town Psych sound, particularly to the vocals, and a bit of a Kinks feel overall. That's a really strong one. Then they follow that with If I Needed Someone, which is a cover of the Beatles tune, which, even though it's written by George Harrison, is credited to Lennon and McCartney on the back of the sleeve. Whoops. And they do a decent job of that. But the track that follows, With Love, which is one of their own tracks, is really good. It's one of the highlights on here. It's dreamy, drifting pop. Most definitely Psych with processed vocals. Really good sounding tune. The final track on side one is the only duffer on here really. It's called Monday Tuesday, and it's a minute and 50 seconds of pointless 1920s style whimsical pastiche. Don't know why bands always put those kind of things on Psych albums, but they did, and you just got to live with it. But it's brief, gone nice and quickly. Second side starts with a real highlight called Diamond Studded Eyes, and that's a lovely sort of UK centric bit of pop Psych, which, if you told me it was a like a unused cut from the Dukes of Stratosphere album, I'd have believed you. It's got that kind of feel to it. Then they follow that with a cover by originally done by the Cowsills called How Can I Make You See, and that's got a real sort of psychedelicized Motown feel to it, lots of organ and sitar. And it's decent, not one of the highlights, but it's a decent song. But they follow it with possibly my favourite track on the album, which is called Travel, and it's a 5-minute track, so there's some reasonably lengthy tracks on here. And it's all sort of echoey piano, bongos, strummed acoustic guitar. There's handbells on there, there are strings. There's what sounds like a Japanese koto, sort of stringed instrument, glockenspiel, you name it. It's a really chill, dreamy, trippy, instrumental, almost soundtrack sounding bit of music. Love it. And then they finish with the longest track on the album called A Second Time. And unfortunately that comes across as a fairly slender idea stretched over the 8.5 minutes. It's not terrible, It has a sort of doomy, portentous feel to it. It's an okay track, but not the strongest way to finish the album. But overall, I so highly recommend this. I mean, I love that psychedelic artwork. I mean, the guys' faces are so distorted as to be almost unrecognisable as faces. I love the graphic quality of the band logo there. Really great stuff. And what a bargain. 25 quid for that. So that's the first of my recent pickups. And it just gets better from here on in. Now, did I say it gets better from here on in? No, let's put it this way, the quality is maintained because there is some really good stuff here. Next up was one that I picked up in one of my local charity shops. I think I mentioned before that they collect up all their vinyl donations over the year, and they sort of drip feed them out in the course of a year, but they keep the best stuff for when they have a quarterly sale. And I picked up a bunch of stuff last month from there, and one I saw didn't have a price on it. I thought, oh, that's great, I'd really like that. I bet they're going to want a fortune for it. But I looked at the condition and I nearly put it back because there's a dirty great scratch across it. Not so much a scratch as some sort of weird raised trench. Can you have a raised trench? Probably not, but it's a feelable mark anyway. And I took my other stuff up to the counter and said to them, this one's not priced. What are you going to charge me for it? And they took it away and had a look at it, and they came back and said, I'll have it for £1. I'm like, okay. Every day of the week I'm having this for £1. It's Jerry Moore and his Life is a Constant Journey Home. And bit of background on this guy. He's a singer-songwriter. Came from sort of New York area, I believe. Certainly played around the sort of Greenwich Village folk circuit. And when he was a student studying in South Carolina, he was actually jailed for sitting in the whites only section of a restaurant. And I imagine that kind of has informed his lyrical take on things, his sort of attitude to life, and yeah, a bit of a social commentator, and a bit of a walks it like he talks it kind of a hero as well. There's the guy there. So what's it sound like? Well, he sounds like a kind of a bit like Richie Havens, I suppose. He has a kind of a relaxed, hippie country vibe to his delivery. Really nice, soothing, warm voice. He's a folky singer-songwriter. There are occasional light funk moments on here as well, like on the track This Is My Time, first track on side 2. I'm not talking funkadelic here, but there's just that kind of feel to the guitars and the sort of groove. Tons of nice rolling bass lines on here, clean picked and strummed guitar. In no way would I call this psychedelic, but it would probably appeal to people who are into their psychedelic music because it's just got that sort of period feel to it. Like I say, Jerry Moore's voice is warm, it's expressive, it's mellow. He also plays guitar, but the renowned jazz guitarist Eric Gale is on here as well, presumably providing most of the complicated stuff. There's some sort of nice jazzy sort of moments on the guitar as well. So that's a really nice one. Comes on the Fontana label. And I don't know whether you'll be able to see that. There you go, that mark on there, and that is feelable. So that was putting me off, and I thought if we're going to want a tenner for it, a 15 quid, I'll pass. But when this is a quid, I thought maybe it'll play through that mark. Maybe it won't, but for a quid, it's worth a gamble. And it plays through with just soft background clicks, which are far from intrusive. So I'm really happy to have my copy of this. So there you go, Jerry Moore. And next up is an album that I've been after for quite a long time. Been sat on my want list for 2 or 3 years at least. And it's the one and only album by a band called 930 Fly, a self-titled album. And it came out in 1972. This isn't an original. The original's a bit on the pricey side when they turn up. It was released on the Ember label, and this reissue in fact is on the Ember label as well. Let me just show you those labels. And I think they came, I think the band was formed somewhere around the West Country or something like that. Can't remember off the top of my head. Perhaps I'll stick it up on screen when I edit this video. Like I say, came out in 1972. This is a 2011 reissue. And I like the fact there's no band name or album title on the cover. Just this picture of a clock caught in a spider's web. The hand's stuck on 9:30. So I guess the band name is there in visually, 9:30 Fly. And there is the band, featuring some fine trousers, I've got to say. And this guy's flared tartan trousers are a particular favourite of mine, and then those spotty numbers as well. Good stuff. The band featured a husband and wife team on vocals, so you got your male and your female vocals, which for me works really well. On the whole, the album is kind of in the vein of Renaissance, with a bit of Wishbone Ash thrown in, and some West Coast Psych tinges sort of left over from the 60s as well. The drumming on here is jazzy. There's a fair bit of electric piano, I think played by the wife in the partnership here. Lots of meandering bass, some tasteful guitar, which is used sparingly and effectively, and even some mellotron on the track Brooklyn Thoughts, which is probably my least favourite track on here. I love a bit of mellotron, but that track just, well, it goes by without me really noticing it, to be honest. The general opinion on this album is that it's amateurish and easily dismissed, but I really like it. I really like it. It still retains some slight psych elements, like I say, and I like both vocalists on here, even though the male vocalist is generally panned by most reviewers. I think the voices work really well together, especially when the female singer uses hers as a kind of an ethereal backing to his vocal. Not sure which tracks I'd recommend because I've not played it enough to be really familiar, but Mr. 509 I think was one of the tracks I really enjoyed, and the opening track Life and Times as well was really good. I'm sure I'm missing others which are worthy of mention, but yeah, all in all, I think this is a really great album. No regrets about buying this at all. I picked it up at a record store. We were on a family trip up to Stratford upon Avon, and we had a brief trip to Leamington Spa. There's a there's a record shop there called Leamington Records, and fantastic shop. I bought an absolute ton of stuff there. Some really good stuff. I'll show you some more today, and there's others perhaps I'll be showing another day, but really good bargain bins, a whole bargain basement. In fact, all the albums are £1. This wasn't £1. Paid 20 quid for this, and I'm very happy with it. Great album. So one of the records I bought in the bargain basement for £1 was this one, Hey June, which is a compilation album I've never seen before, and it's a Dutch compilation album, all Dutch acts, released on what I assume is a Dutch label. I'll show you this. It's the Imperial label. And I'm not a huge one for compilations, just because I find I don't tend to visit them that often, because more often than not there's tracks that I'm overly familiar with or ones I'm just not interested in. But every track on here is well worth investigating, and I'm going to go through them one by one because they're all quite different. It starts off with Brain Box, so probably, yeah, I'd say the most well-known band on here. They featured Jan Akkerman before he went off and joined Focus. And the first track here is commercial bluesy rock. Good stuff, unspectacular, but it's good. Then it's followed by a track by a band called Opus, and that is bluesy progressive hard rock with Hammond organ, and it almost sounds like Leaf Hound or someone like that. It's a really good track. It's called Baby Come On. Then there's a band called Slight Ache, and again, most of these bands I've never heard of before, and how they've escaped my notice I don't know. But Slight Ache, I guess the reason I didn't know about them is because the track on here is the A-side of their one and only 7-inch single, the only thing they released, and it's quirky progressive pop, sort of slash art pop with a really nice groove to it. I'm surprised they only put out the one record, to be honest. Then the side finishes with a track called Fallen Tree by Ahura Mazda, whose name rings a bit of a bell, I'm not sure why, but that track's kind of psychedelic, jazzy prog with a load of flute on it. And in fact, the flute player had previously played with Group 1850, a band who I am familiar with and absolutely love, so hardly surprising that I enjoy that track. Then side 2 starts with a track by the Continental Uptight Band, which is a little bit different to anything else on here. It's almost Beatles influenced piano rock, and it's pretty good for what it is. Then there's a track called Little Sister by September, which is more bluesy hard rock with some really big vocal harmonies, so as you can imagine, that's right up my street. Then there's a band called Island who give us a track called Superwoman, which is some really Zeppelin-esque hard rock, really great stuff. Then there's a second track by Brainbox, the only act to get 2 tracks on this, which is more sort of chirpy, bluesy, boogie rock. But the best track is the one that's kept for last, which is a band called Ritmo Naturel. And the track is called Morning After the Third. And it's an absolutely amazing track. I love it. It features Jan Akkerman on guitar. I don't think he was a member of the band. I think he was just a guest player on this particular track. But it's trippy, drifting music. It's got a ton of spacey saxophone on it. All kind of, I don't know, it must be played through some sort of effect to give it a real sort of echoey kind of phase sound. There's a load of Latin percussion on it. And like I say, Jan Ackerman's guitar, it's a fantastic, fantastic tune. So check it out if you can. But £1 for this, I had no idea what I was getting, but it's an absolute keeper. It's a great album, and even for that one Ritmo Naturel track, well worth keeping. And then for something quite different that might appeal to some of you, perhaps not all of you, but I'm not really one for audiobooks generally. I like to read, I love to read, but I like to do it when I'm listening to music, so audiobooks just don't do it for me. But this is kind of different. It's not an audiobook. It's a weird experimental electronic album that happens to mainly consist of a narrated story. And it's by the Eccentronic Research Council. And the album's called Johnny Rocket, Narcissist and Music Machine, I'm Your Biggest Fan. And this, I can't remember how I discovered this, but I think this is a fantastic piece of music, it's a fantastic piece of writing. It's a brilliant short story. It's kind of deals with an obsessive fan stalking the lead singer of a fictitious Yorkshire sort of pub rock band, local band. Pub rock's perhaps the wrong term because the narrator on this is she's got a broad sort of Sheffield accent. She sounds, to me, it sounded almost like Jane Horrocks was narrating, but in fact I found out it's an actress called Maxine Peake, who I think has been in programmes like the sitcom Dinner Ladies and things like that. And she does an amazing job of narrating this. She really inhabits the character. And her rising psychotic obsession with the singer in this band is just brilliantly played out. And there's sort of incidental electronic music throughout, which is kind of like Sheffield synth pop, really. That kind of, I guess, influenced by Human League and bands like that. But it's darker than that. It almost brings to mind the BBC radiophonic orchestra. And yeah, I think you've got to check this out. What I would say, I heard it first online. I think it's on Spotify. And the way the vinyl is mastered, some of the dialogue, or the narration, I should say, it's a monologue, is a little bit lost amongst the music and with the background sounds and stuff. It's much clearer on the CD that comes with this, and obviously on Spotify. But it's a really, really good listen. Absolutely love it. So different. And it stands up to repeated plays. I've played this half a dozen times and I enjoy it every time. I won't spoil the story by telling you how it ends, but it doesn't end well. So yeah, one worth checking out. And it comes with a free 12-inch single, which I've not actually played yet. So look forward to doing that. And next is an album that I very nearly passed on. I don't know, I think I sampled it online briefly. I just thought, good, but not great. Do I really want to be spending money on this? And I came to my senses, particularly when the vendor sent me an offer to buy it for a few quid off. And I thought, it's got to be done. I think I paid about 20 quid for this. And the band is Soup, and this is the album Soup. And as you can see, that sleeve is in really nice shape. It's got the original lyric in the sleeve, and it is in lovely condition. Really, really nice bit of vinyl. It's on Big Tree Records. This came out in 1971. I think the band was from Wisconsin, and they're a 3-piece. Definitely not a power trio. That's not the route they go down. This is, well, it's a mellow sort of mood piece, this album. It rocks, but it's mellow, sort of laid back, rural rock, I suppose. The singer's got sort of slightly tremulous Neil Young style voice. Same guy, I think. Yeah, the lead singer is also the guitarist. This guy called Doug Yankus. And my God, can he play? What a player. Absolutely amazing. Band is so tight as well. Really, really tight. Yeah, it is just, like I say, a 3-piece bass, drums and singing guitarist. Funnily enough, the reviewer in The Endless Trip, which is one of my go-to reference books, gives the LP a resounding thumbs down. They'd done one album before this, an independently released thing that just came out, I think, in a plain white sleeve and is impossible to find. People seem to love that album, aren't too crazy about this one. I mean, other reviews are pretty lukewarm. But I don't get it. This is hippie rural blues with a little bit of a Psych aftertaste. And as such, I can't get enough of it. I can't believe I nearly passed on this. I'd have been kicking myself. I mean, it starts really well with a track called Dance Magic Woman. It's got clean trebly guitar, vaguely funky rural West Coast feel to it. And like I say, that slightly tremulous Neil Young type vocal. And it just sounds like the band's playing for themselves. They sound relaxed and confident, and like they don't give a damn whether you like their music, because they are really enjoying playing it. The second track on here is a bit of a highlight as well, Don't Be Lonely. It's softly psychedelic, sort of Neil Young type stuff, I guess, with some tasty acoustic guitar, lots of rolling toms and shimmering cymbals, very much in a kind of Fleetwood Mac albatross type of way. Lovely sounding track. Elsewhere, you've got a track called Many Lovers Dance Inside Your Head, which, apart from being a great song title, is a really good tune. It's got a really nice groovy bass line, some great guitar textures. And let's see, first track on side 2, Never Love Again, is another highlight. And the influences on that, I guess I would say, again, Neil Young, certainly the Grateful Dead, And if you're familiar with a band called the Wizards from Kansas, got that kind of rural psychedelic vibe going on as well. This is just such a lovely album. Can't get enough of it. Absolutely love it. And just goes to show you can't always believe the reviews. And if you do believe all the reviews, the chances are you're going to miss out on some good stuff. Then again, you listen to me, you might buy something you hate. So that's the risk you take. But do check it out. I love this album. Brilliant stuff. And now for something a bit different. And this is something I picked up online. Paid 10 quid for this. It is a minty copy. Can't believe what great shape it's in. And it's the debut album by a band called Carthago, who are not the krautrock band Carthago. And I guess that name is something to do with Carthage, the sort of ancient North African, was it Tunisian city. So two bands with the same name, but they're quite different. They're definitely not the funky sort of krautrock band of that name. They are a bunch of Hungarians who put out their debut in 1979. And the first thing I need to draw attention to is that album artwork, which I think is fantastic, just because it's so baffling. You've got some rampaging elephant shooting lasers out of his eyes on some weird planet, and the back doesn't make things any clearer. You've got to check out the way the band is dressed. I mean, this was 1979 when everyone else was dressing in skinny ties and wanting to look like Joe Jackson or Elvis Costello, and they don't. There's a lot of cloak work going on there, and fair play to them. I love a band that's brave with their image like that. So what's it sound like? Well, it's really special commercial progressive hard rock, sort of in the vein of Deep Purple or the John Lawton era of Uriah Heep. And I imagine they're fairly heavily influenced by their fellow countrymen Omega as well. There's a ton of Hammond organ on here, really tasty, hard riffing guitar, and a superb vocalist. Sings everything in Hungarian, don't understand a word of it, don't need to understand a word of it. The performances are fantastic. Again, this doesn't get a lot of love, don't get it. Perhaps I've got terrible taste and everyone else is right, but I don't think so. I think this is amazing. I imagine this album could have been huge if the band were British and had released the album about 5 years earlier, because as you can kind of tell from the photograph on the back, the band was a little bit out of step. I guess in part that comes from living behind the Iron Curtain. You know, you don't quite keep up to date with the current trends. But who cares? You know, from the sort of vantage point of 2023, it's just a brilliant album. Who cares whether in 1979 it was seen as being out of date? And I don't think it was in Hungary. I think they were a very popular and successful band in their homeland. This has, you know, it's dynamic, exciting stuff, great songs, brilliant musicianship, and I can't recommend any particular tracks because they're all written in Hungarian. Actually, there are British translations, but I don't know the album well enough at the moment to cherry pick particular tracks, but in part that's because I've just enjoyed it all from beginning to end. So if you see this, do pick it up. I think they released a second album, which I need to get. But yeah, Carthago, the Hungarian hard rock band. Look for the cloaks. You can't miss them. Oh, and it's on the Pepito label, which is a Hungarian label, and nice custom labels there with the band Elephant on there. Great stuff. And next up is a charity shop find, something I picked up for £1. I saw the cover, and actually I walked away, so I thought, even if it's only £1, do I really need to be lumbered with something that's going to be a load of crap? And I kept thinking about that cover, and I went back for it the next day. It was still there. So glad I did. Because well, you can see why I was drawn to that. I mean, how psychedelic does that look? And yes, I knew it wasn't going to be a long lost, undiscovered Psych gem because it's the Ted Heath Orchestra. And my dad was into the Ted Heath Orchestra, probably earlier stuff than this, because this came out in 1969. But that cover is just fantastic, isn't it? And this is, as the title, The Big Ones, would suggest, it's the big hits of the day, done in sort of big band orchestra style. And so you've got Spinning Wheel by Blood, Sweat and Tears. You've got Light My Fire by The Doors. You've got a couple of Stones songs. You've got A Whiter Shade of Pale, Nights in White Satin, The Beatles Get Back. And this is fantastic. You've got, as you expect, kind of horns rubbing up alongside electric guitar and organ. You've got swinging orchestra and these incredible drums, that real kind of orchestra pit type drum sound. And I think this record is fairly heavily mined for beats by people who make kind of hip hop and stuff like that, and you can see why. There's so many open breaks on here. I won't go through it track by track because this is getting to be a bit of a long video, but highlights are Light My Fire, where they do a kind of a bossa nova bachelor pad version of the track with real groove and trumpets playing Jim Morrison's vocal parts. Nights in White Satin lends itself really well to the big band treatment. Get Back, they turn it into a swinging, bluesy, sort of swaggering big band workout. Good Morning Sunshine, or Good Morning Starshine, which is a song from the Hair soundtrack, is a really loungy version with kind of a bingo hall Wurlitzer organ on it. It's a lot of fun. It's not psychedelic, but it's got so much period flavour. You feel like you're on the set of an Austin Powers movie when you're listening to it. And the musicianship's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And when you get something like their cover of Satisfaction, where there's an almost distorted guitar in there, I don't want to get too out there and underground, and the vocal melody being played in turn by a smoochy sax, a muted trumpet, clarinet, an organ. It's just a really original take on the songs, and when you're sick of listening to the originals, this is just a real refreshing change of scene, really. So yeah, Ted Heath Orchestra, Ted Heath and his music. Yeah, if you see it, pick it up, especially if it's only £1. I think you'll enjoy it, you'll have a lot of fun. And finally is one of those albums I picked up for £1 in that Leamington Records shop in Leamington Spa. And I was just grabbing stuff at random that looks like it might be vaguely interesting. I thought, what have I got to lose? But to be honest, if I'd looked closer at this album and seen the insert that came with it, I would probably have left it behind. And I'd have never known what I was missing, because this is a brilliant album. There's the insert. The band is Shotgun Angel. No, it's not. The album's called Shotgun Angel. The band is Daniel Amos. And they look like a bunch of cowboys, and that's kind of what they are. I think they were probably out of California, but I wouldn't swear to that. And they're on the Marantha label, which I'm guessing is a Christian label, because all the lyrics which are reproduced on the inside of this insert make it very clear that these guys are 24/7 God brothers. It's very, very Christian. Not my thing at all, or so you'd have thought. But this is such a surprising album. The first side is good in itself. I mean, I listened through the whole album once without picking up on the fact they're Christian. Whether that means I wasn't paying attention or they're not overly preachy, I don't know. But the first side is really good quality country rock, Eagles style stuff with a bit trucker country thrown in for good measure. It's really good for what it is. Very well performed, beautiful harmonies, great musicianship, all the stuff you'd expect. And I thought, yeah, well worth £1 of anyone's money. No complaints here. Flipped the record over and I couldn't quite believe what I was hearing. Seriously unexpected. They've decided to go kind of conceptual and prog on the second side, and it's one long suite of songs, and it starts off with what's it called, the finale. It's an overture, and it's this orchestrated overture, as the name suggests, and that leads into a track called Lady Goodbye, which has a definite sort of Elton John Eagles feel to it, some strings. I'm thinking this is nice orchestrated stuff. I'm into this. This isn't bad at all. Then you get these howling wolves, and there are all these little segues between the tracks, and the wolves lead into a track called The Whistler, which starts with sort of these distant celestial spooky choirs and chugging orchestrated country rock. It's like a prog rock Eagles mixed with ELO. And I thought, yeah, this is just getting more and more interesting and just so different to the first side and what you'd expect from this band. Then there's a track called He's Going to Do a Number on You, which is sophisticated art rock. Again, it's like a mix of 10cc and the Alan Parsons Project. Gorgeous vocal harmonies on there. Loads of piano, some really slick guitar. Really tasteful, interesting, quirky stuff. And that's followed up by a track called Better, which again is quirky art rock in that kind of 10cc vein. And it brings to mind other bands that have that kind of quirky art rock feel to them. Perhaps you're not familiar with a band called Russia, but they kind of get lumped in with AOR and that kind of thing, but they're too quirky to be AOR, but they've got that real experimental, quirky vibe to them. And there's a bit of Pilot in here as well, and Brian Prothero and Paul McCartney. And that track ends, next track starts with the sounds of cash registers. It all goes a bit kind of Pink Floyd Money. And then the track Sail Me Away, which is a slick, sophisticated ballad with acoustic guitar, harp, not mouth harp, celestial harp stuff. Some pristine vocal harmonies. There's an accordion on there, there's trumpets, there's strings. It's absolute oral nectar, this song. It reminds me a lot of Ambrosia. It's in that kind of vein. So it's really sophisticated, slick, arty, progressive rock. And then the final track, Posse in the Sky, is more kind of standard country rock. Very Eagles, lots of pedal steel guitar, beautiful harmonies, and closes out the album on a note that kind of brings it full circle, I suppose. But the second side is just so unexpected. Really, really is unexpected. This is ripe for discovery, this album. It is so good. Like I say, first side is great anyway. Really enjoyable for what it is. Second side, just left my jaw on the floor. There you go, there's the labels. So don't sleep on some of this Christian rock if you see it. I mean, obviously a lot of it's not going to be great, but there's some real surprises out there. And this is one of them. So Daniel Amos and Shotgun Angel. And Shotgun Angel, in fact, refers to God riding in the cab alongside a trucker, making sure he gets home safe after hours on the road. It's what God does. Hangs out of truckers. So there you go. There's a bunch of my recent pickups. Like I say, I've got a ton more to show you, and I'll try and make the next lot as good and as eclectic as this lot. So be interested to read your comments. See you again soon. Take care. Bye.